This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first, like you know to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
Hey, baseball fans. Welcome to Rounders, your baseball history podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lambert. Get ready to step into the time machine with us, and we're not just talking stats and scores. We're digging into the heart and soul of the players, teams, and countries that have made this a global sport. From the underdog stories to those jaw-dropping moments, Rounders is your front seat to the epic journey of baseball. So grab a seat in the digital bleachers, relax, and let's swing for the fences together. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another week, another episode of Rounders, a history of baseball in America. I am your host, Jeff Lambert. It's great to be back with you. Today, we're going to be going through part 2 of our recently begun series called Baseball's Origins, where we're going to be looking at abroad how baseball traveled to other countries, how it grew in popularity there, and its entire origin story. So we decided to go first to Australia to be able to start that journey. And in the last episode, I would encourage you, if you didn't get a chance to listen, to go back and be able to get part 1 of this information. We talked about how baseball arrived in Australia. We talked about how American financiers and teams helped come to the country to popularize the sport in Australia, such as Albert Spalding's Spalding Tours. We talked about how an Australian club came here and tried to do a similar tour. And then we jumped into talking about Australian baseball leagues and clubs and the domestic package growing on its own as well. And we left off at about 1914 when there was another tour from the United States that featured players from the New York Giants and the Chicago White Sox that helped further popularize the sport. So for today, we're going to be focusing on talking about from 1914 onwards, what were some of the major events in Australian baseball that helped further popularize and organize the sport. And then we're going to finish off by talking about specific Australian players that have made big names on the world stage, particularly playing in Major League Baseball. So let's jump into that and more for today's episode. All right, let's jump into it. So we left off in 1914. Baseball in Australia is still finding its footing, but the foundations are there. We've seen American clubs come over and stage exhibition events to great crowds across the country. We've seen Australia develop its own professional baseball clubs in different cities across the country. They're starting to play each other. And this is going to lead to 2 major events that help standardize a national presence for baseball across the country. So the first of those was the creation of what's known as the Claxton Shield. Now, this tournament that was created was named after a guy named Norrie Claxton, who was a really big proponent early on for baseball in Australia, and he was a well-known athlete across the country. He had excelled as a cricketer, as an Australian rules football player, and he had even won major cycling events. So he was a household name in a lot of ways, and he became the first president of the South Australian Baseball League. And after doing that, he worked tirelessly to promote baseball across the country. So he established the Claxton Shield, and this was critical because it didn't just establish just a tournament for the country's top teams to play in. Winning that shield became not just a trophy, but a bragging right. It united players from all across the country. It gave fans something to rally around. It became that cup that everybody wanted their club to take home. And it featured the best clubs across the country to play each other for the first time. Another major development in Australia for baseball happened much later on in 1989, which was the foundation and the formation of the Australian Baseball League, or the ABL. So this league was set up to showcase the best talent in the country. Instead of having regional leagues competing once a year in a cup, they wanted to create a national league, if you will. And, in 1989, it started off. had some high points, really struggled with financial issues, and the league was suspended in 1999, just 10 years after it had begun. But that wasn't the end of a National Baseball League in Australia. In 2010, the league came back even stronger, and that was thanks to a partnership that was created between the ABL and Major League Baseball. And the goal was to set up a place where they could showcase talent inside the country. And the MLB's role was not just to provide funding, but they wanted to share knowledge and resources to help the ABL grow sustainably and make it into like a long-term asset for the country and for baseball's growth worldwide. And so the ABL is still going strong today. And, even though I had that little dip, now there's a national presence for players to be able to grow and develop into the sport and be able to play on a national stage. But Australia wasn't just content with its domestic growth. No, no. They've made their mark on the world stage too. For example, in the 2004 Athens Olympics, the Australia national team absolutely shocked the world when they came and they clinched the silver medal. And that cemented their place as a team that was worth watching on the international stage for the first time. And that victory set the tone for their participation in other major competitions globally, like the World Baseball Classic, which I look forward to every time it comes around. So Australia has consistently showed that it can compete with the top countries in the world. For example, in 2009 at the World Baseball Classic, the Australian squad secured a very significant victory where they beat Mexico with a commanding 17-7 win. And that game really showed off the offensive capabilities of Australian athletes. Now, even though they secured that huge win over a loaded Mexico team, they were unable to progress beyond the initial round. But still, that was their coming out game where everybody got to see the Australians are here. And to take it a step further, just recently in 2023 at the World Baseball Classic, Australia achieved another historic milestone. The squad advanced to the quarterfinals this time, and they won with victories over South Korea, China, and the Czech Republic in the group stage. No small feat. And in the quarterfinals, they almost won. They faced Cuba, one of the top teams always in the WBC. They were narrowly defeated 4-3. They almost pulled out that game. It was a heck of a one to watch. And that marked their best performance in WBC history. So Australia has steadily gotten better and more commanding on the international stage as well as their domestic product has grown. So that takes us to today, where baseball is at in Australia. It's going strong, and nothing shows that more than the presence of notable Australian players that are playing on baseball's biggest stage, Major League Baseball. So I want to take a moment to be able to go through who are some of the major players that have gone through and played in the MLB that have Australian descent. So before we get to the ones that are currently playing, let me take you through chronologically. So, big names, big Australian names that came through and played professional baseball on the biggest stage here in the United States. Let's start off with Joe Quinn. We're going way back here. Joe Quinn was officially the first Australian born player to step into professional baseball in the U.S. He debuted all the way back in 1884, playing for a squad called the St. Louis Maroons. But he didn't just play, he played for an incredible 17 seasons, and he was the player manager for a few different teams during his career. And he was a jack of all trades kind of an athlete. He had versatility on the field, at the plate, and of course had that leadership in the dugout that really came to define other players that would come and play uh, in the United States from Australia. So that takes us to, I think, the biggest name when we think of Australian athletes in the MLB, and that was a gentleman named Dave Nilsson. So Dave Nilsson made his MLB debut in 1992 with the Milwaukee Brewers, and he was known for having a strong bat, and he was known for being adaptable at the plate as well, to be able to be very good at adjusting to different pitchers and being able to know how to hit them. So Nilsson became the first Australian to make an all-star team, which he did in 1999. Throughout his career, he played multiple different positions. He consistently was a good hitter, and he established himself as a respected player across the league. And that success for Dave Nilsson showed young Australian players that they could reach the MLB and thrive there. So that takes us to more recent guys who have come on the scene and really showed that Australian baseball has arrived. We'll start off by talking about Dave Nilsson. So, Dave Nilsson, another game changer, Australian product. He made his debut in 2001 and quickly earned a reputation as being this hard throwing reliever, no nonsense kind of the guy with this intense presence on the mound. And Balfour enjoyed a long career. He played for several teams. He had standout years with the Oakland Athletics and with the Tampa Bay Rays, and he made an All Star team in 2013. When he finished his career, he closed over 80 games. So he had 80 career saves, as well as just being known for that guy with just a big competitive spirit. Was a fan favorite on all the teams that he pitched for. We have Liam Hendriks next on the list. So Hendriks, also another closer that hailed from Australia, helped really, I think, make the position continue to be a critical one for pitching squads. He came around in 2011. He was known as one of the most reliable relievers in the game for a good stretch of time during the 2010s. He had multiple all-star nods, and he led the league in saves on one year as well. He had this powerful fastball, relentless approach, and he pitched for teams like the Athletics as well and the Chicago White Sox. So that brings us to today's current crop of players from Down Under. Let's start by talking about Travis Bazzana. So Bazzana is certainly a new milestone for Australian players. So in 2024, is this young infielder from Sydney. He became the first Australian player ever selected at the top of the Major League Baseball draft. He was picked by the Cleveland Guardians, and that selection really signaled that top tier talent is coming out of this country and scouts need to pay attention. Another name that we're seeing continue to grow is a young guy named Curtis Mead. So Curtis Mead made his 2023 debut for the Tampa Bay Rays, and he was a talented infielder that played in South Australia before making the jump and coming over to the United States. He's played in the minors here. He's known for being a guy who's a good, solid hitter, good versatility in the field. He is now playing on the MLB level, and he's part of that next new wave of Australian players that are really making their sport here in Major League Baseball. So when we bring it all together, folks, when we're starting with Joe Quinn, going all the way to Bazzana and Mead, these new players are coming from Australia. They are known for being top tier talent. And on top of them showing that the sport has arrived in the country, they're the guys that are going to be the role models for other young Australians who want to make it to the big leagues, both in Australia and here in the United States. So it's exciting to see guys reaching this level in terms of their ability and their leadership and their reputation, because it shows just how important baseball is in Australia and for the sport globally. So there you have it, folks. Australia's journey through the world of baseball, all the way from where we started off in the 1800s to now, the Claxton Shield to the revival of the ABL. Australian players are hitting the big leagues now. They're making their mark. And that's exciting because it shows that baseball down under is a story of how baseball can take root anywhere and grow strong globally. So the sport may not be as deeply followed as others in Australia, but every milestone they hit, every win at the WBC, every squad that does well in the Olympics, every player that comes here and crushes it in the MLB, that's going to continue to expand baseball and really make, I think, Aussie fans more and more excited about the sport. Thanks for joining me on this journey through Australia's baseball origins. I'll be back with you next time. And remember, there are only two seasons, winter and baseball. See you next time. Thanks for joining us for this episode as we explored another amazing moment from baseball history. You can help grow the show by liking us on YouTube and your podcast app of choice. Don't forget to head on over and sign up for the free email newsletter and the bonus show, This Week in Baseball History. Just go to www.rounders.substack.com. A special thanks to our premium subscribers that are helping us grow for just $1.25 a week. And to our starting 9 supporters, Nathan Halverson and Jack Wilson, you are the producers helping make this the top baseball history show out there. See you next week, and remember, there are only 2 seasons, winter and baseball.